Welcome to Experts Unleashed, a podcast that aims to uncover how professionals and entrepreneurs transform their experience into income while making a positive impact in the world. I'm your host, Joel Irway, and over the past 4 years, I've helped entrepreneurs develop and launch their expert-based businesses to grow past 6 and 7 figures per year. Now, a professional expert serves their community through paid training, education, or service, and this podcast will show you how to design and execute your plan to become a 6 or 7 figure expert without a big team. So, let's get started. Hey, what's going on, experts? It's Joel here with another very special episode of Experts Unleashed. And man, if I could insert some sound effects here of just an explosion, I would put it right here. Guys and gals, you are in for an amazing piece of content today. I just hopped off the horn with multiple author, extremely brilliant, multiple business owner, multiple multi-million-dollar business owner, Mike Michalowicz, and we were talking about all things business systems. And actually, that's what I thought we were going to be talking about. I thought we were going to be talking about business systems. Why? Mike is the author of the brand new book, Clockwork, which is going to be released on August 21st. And so I had him on the podcast because he had graciously sent me a pre-released copy. I did read some of the book, and I thought that we were going to be talking about, okay, great, how can we build systems to automate our business? When we hopped on the call, when we hopped on the interview, that was the last thing that we talked about. You are in for an amazing episode of all things of relative importance. If you want to eliminate the stress within your business, if you want to stop focusing on sales because sales creates stress, that's one of the things that we talked about in this call. You are going to absolutely love this episode. So I want to give you a brief bio on who Mike Michalowicz is. So by his 35th birthday, Mike had founded and sold 2 multi-million-dollar companies. Confident that he had the formula to success, he became an angel investor and proceeded to lose his entire fortune. Then he started all over again, driven to find better ways to grow healthy, strong companies. Actually, we talked about this in the segment of this episode called Death by Chocolate. I'm going to tease you with what that means, but it's directly relevant to that part of the story. Now, among other innovative strategies, Mike created the Profit First formula, a way for businesses to ensure profitability from their very next deposit forward. Mike is now running his third $1 million venture. He's a former small business columnist for the Wall Street Journal. He's the former MSNBC business makeover expert. He's a popular keynote speaker on innovative entrepreneurial topics and is the author of Profit First, Surge, The Pumpkin Plan, and The Toilet Paper Entrepreneur, all books that are readily available for you to purchase right now. Tune in to this episode. This is a fantastic episode just about all things life, all things business, setting your priorities, and ultimately setting up your business to run like clockwork. So, without further ado, let's jump into today's episode. Hey, Mike, welcome to Experts Unleashed, my man. I'm super excited to have you on the show. Welcome.
Joe, I am pumped to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
So, we got introduced. First of all, thank you so much for sending me a pre-release copy of your book, Clockwork, which, when is the release date? It's end of August, right?
Yes, August 21st of 2018 is when it comes out.
This topic, this conversation is going to be eye-opening for a lot of listeners who are listening right now. Many of my listeners are solopreneurs or they're running very, very small teams. A lot of us are either in the coaching or the consulting or the information space, right?
Yes.
Where we can leverage our information to earn legitimate and great incomes. But many of us really don't know how to get ourselves out, operate on the top down. And I can't say that I'm even remotely skilled in that. I mean, we run a pretty good company, but I'm still heavily involved in touching a lot of things. And so I feel like a lot of my audience and my listeners are probably in that same boat. So Mike, I'm super pumped about having you share your knowledge and talk about your systems within Clockwork, and I know you've written multiple books. But before we jump into it, I want to ask you one question that I always ask a lot of my listeners, and we gave you a really awesome intro in the beginning, but let's break the ice. What's one thing that people can't find on your website? One interesting fact about you that most people wouldn't know?
So I'm into vintage arcade games, like from the 80s and 70s. So last night I was playing Asteroids, getting my butt kicked. But this is a new passion of mine. This isn't like a lifelong thing, but I've always wanted it. And I finally got this machine that has about 200 or 300 vintage games I used to play as a kid. So that's my little side endeavor.
Fascinating. So can't say I'm into vintage video games. I'm definitely into video games. So we share a common bond there.
Yeah.
So very cool. All right, Mike. So I want to talk about your book, Clockwork, right? Probably gave a very convoluted description of what a lot of people struggle with. But what was the whole reason for creating Clockwork?
I think we share a very common community. Like the peeps that you explained are the peeps that I love to hang out with. It's the solopreneur or the very early micro enterprise where we have 2 or 3 employees. Information products. As an author, that's the ultimate information product. Going to a Barnes Noble, it's just information. And so I love our community. I wrote Clockwork because I realized that as we grow our businesses, and I've had businesses actually in other fields too, that there's kind of this hierarchy of needs we go through. There's a thing called Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which perhaps you're familiar with. It was relatively new to me, but the concept was in the human needs, starting off with physiological needs like food and water, and it moved up to shelter and then belonging and so forth. I believe there's a parallel for entrepreneurship, that we have a base of needs in our businesses. The foundation is sales. And if we don't have sales coming into our organization, if there's not revenue being generated and inbound cash flow, the business, that's the oxygen for business. You are suffocating without sales. So every entrepreneur, and we all know this inherently. The next level up is profit. I wrote a book called Profit First, specifically to address this. And I consider this the nourishment for a business. It's the food, it's the water. Sadly, Joel, most businesses don't get to the nourishment phase. Most businesses are starving. They're making sales, but they're starving for cash, profit. And sadly, they revert to trying to make more sales to get through this. They actually try to gasp for more air when they simply need substance, food, and water. That's what profit is. Well, once we get past that stage, once you have a consistent stream of sales, once you're taking home an income and that stress level's gone, there's profit, there's sustainability. The next level up now is time. That's the one thing that so many entrepreneurs will trade for the success of their business. I will make the ultimate sacrifice and I'll grind it out every day, every night. I'll sacrifice family and friends and so forth. What we want to get to is this level where we have the freedom to do what we want, when we want, in our personal lives and in our business. That's why I wrote Clockwork, to get to this next level. I want readers to understand that even with a micro enterprise, even with a single employee business, your business has a degree of freedom where it can run on its own. And if we do that, it gives us the freedom to do what we're passionate about within our lives and within our business. Bring back that balance to life. That's what Clockwork does.
I love that. So bring back the balance. I want to highlight something that you mentioned during that description. By the way, I love parallels. Like that's like deep down, like as a marketer at heart and a researcher at heart, like I'm trying to draw parallels and metaphors from anything that I possibly can. It's a lot of fun. And anyway, so I love that you...
Yeah, and it resonates with people because then they can see, oh yes, I see it here, I see it here, there.
Yeah, that's what great teachers do, great instructors do. So you mentioned something about going up the levels. Like you've got the foundation, which is sales, and then the level above that is profit. And you said people are gasping for air because they think that even though they're making sales, they think the cure to their profit problem is making more sales, right? Did I explain that correctly? And it's
exactly it. It's an insidious trap.
It is.
Right. Because sales, we don't really realize this at a conscious level, but subconsciously, we all know this. Sales is stress. The more sales we make, the more obligation we have. Sale is someone gives you money with an expectation return. So the more sales you have, the more expectations placed upon you, which is more stress. The counterbalance to that stress is profitability, sustainability. So I'll tell you, if a business does, say, $200,000 in sales and no profit, that's pretty stressful. If a business does $2 million in sales and no profit, that's really stressful. So we keep on increasing the stress level and get frustrated that there's no profit, put more stress on ourselves. So we need this balance, this counterbalance of profitability, without a question.
That is a fascinating way to think about it. It took me a long time to understand that. And back in early of this year, I think I probably went through one of the most stressful pieces of my business. I mean, it's like our sales were through the roof,
Nice.
right?
Yeah.
But you said something that's extremely powerful and extremely valid, which is the more sales that you make, the more expectations
Right.
you have.
Right.
We don't really think like until you get to like, I got to a breaking point back in December and January of this year. Like, and for me, I never would have thought that was true until I got to that breaking point. And you said sales equals stress. And that would, like, if somebody had told me that before I got to that breaking point, like, I think a light bulb would have gone off, and at least allowed me to take a step back and be like, okay, let's explore that a little bit more, because I could probably agree with it, but it's like, okay, do I really need more sales, or do I need more breathing room?
It's hard to break out of that. So I hope it would give you pause and other people. The challenge is it's wired into the fabric of entrepreneurship. Like when you and I get together for a drink or something, and I say, how's business going? The likely response is, oh, our sales are taking off. And I'll say, well, our sales are taking off. The ego starts pounding about the size of the business. I'll be like, hey, man, I just hired 4 employees. You're like, I just hired 5. I'm like, damn it, I need to hire 6. So there's this like competitive, crazy ego thing about size. I've never met an entrepreneur that says, hey, Mike, how's business going? Tell me about the bottom line. Like, that's never the conversation, which ironically is the health of the business. So it's hard to unwind that, but the fabric of entrepreneurship is about the top line, when I don't think that's the right focus. It should be about the bottom line. It should be about profitability, because that's really what matters for sustainability.
Yeah. What's scary is that if you actually asked a lot of entrepreneurs who haven't gotten to that breaking point yet, you know, if you ask them like, okay, hey, what's the bottom line? I mean, how many do you think would actually be able to tell you like what their real bottom line is?
They wouldn't know. They wouldn't know. And many are stuck in the beliefs. They're so entrenched in the sales belief that sales is everything. I've done presentations in front of large groups, small groups too, all sizes, and I talk about profit. The first question I almost always get is, but I want to grow my business, so I can't take profit. And I'm like, whoever says you need to take more money out of your business to support growth is wrong. Whoever said it takes money to make money is a freaking liar. It's bull. It takes innovation. So what I explain to people is when you take your profit first, when you start reserving profit, it actually forces you to run a healthy business. That's critical. But secondly, to find innovative strategies that work within your means and beat the competition. Mm-hmm. Here's the greatest irony, Joel. Businesses that focus on profit and drive profit consistently outstrip their competition on growth because they're focusing on the stuff that matters. It's not arbitrary. The people who are just all about sales, every penny comes in, goes back out, they start just kind of winging things. Oh, everyone else is crushing on Facebook. I better do Facebook ads. And they blow their money and say, well, that didn't work. We need to sell more. And it's arbitrary. By focusing on profit, it brings a healthy balance that you only drive forward with the stuff that actually generates more profit, and you kind of ladder up.
So I'm curious of, obviously this is a big epidemic. This is a big problem, I should say. This is a real big problem for the small enterprise, the small business owners, especially the people who don't really have. So I'll be transparent. I don't have a business background, right? But I got hooked on. My first experience into entrepreneurship was a commission-only sales rep. And my primary focus there was just sell. Right. And then I realized I was making my company a lot of money, and then jumped into entrepreneurship. And then, but I didn't have a formal business background. Like, is this just a problem that solopreneurs and small business owners have? Or do you see this also with like larger companies? Or do you see this as a widespread problem, or really just kind of for our niche?
Well, I see it predominantly with small business, but let me define what I define as small business.
Sure.
I'm talking companies that do about $10 million revenue or less.
Okay.
So what I consider micro enterprise, what I'm passionate about are these sub $1 million companies, a few 100,000, a few employees. Maybe they've achieved their first $1 million. That's my field of passion. But I've studied up to companies that do about 50 million. I found companies even up to 10 million are still kind of hand to mouth. Not everyone, but many of them. And they start playing a cash flow game. Many businesses are in the cash flow game. And the cash flow game works like this. Not profitable, meaning when I do a sale, I'm spending all that money. But if I make another sale today, an influx of money will come and it'll bridge me for now. I'll blow that money pretty quickly. But if I keep on piling on more sales, there's this constant influx of money. So what a lot of businesses experience, Joel, as they grow is sales are like this. It's growing over time. But they notice that their expenses are running almost in parallel. The day they have a sustained dip in sales, like, God, we had a bad week or month, the business goes into this total spiral because now they can't play the cash flow game and panic ensues. That's when they say, well, stretch the credit cards. Don't even open the bills. Wait till the vendors call. Send the old fake check that I forgot to sign so it won't get processed. Sorry. And delay. That's all cash flow games. Sadly, it happens with bigger and bigger companies. The interesting thing is, as a small business, if you think you're stressed about cash flow, wait until you meet someone running a $5 million company that has $1 million or $2 million of debt kind of weighing on their shoulders. When they can't afford that, like, they can go to jail over things like this, or go into bankruptcy is more likely, or experience serious consequences where it wrecks their lives. So the sooner we get out of this game of banking on sales alone and ignoring profit, the sooner we get out of this, the healthier we'll be. And the last part is, businesses that focus on profit remove that stress, and they're much more strategic also about their growth, also facilitating faster growth.
Fantastic, man. So with a company that is probably overstressed right now, like, what would be the first thing that you would say, listen, here's what we need to look at? Is it, the elephant in the room, is it profit first? Is it looking at that number?
It's the elephant in the room. There's no question. And so what we have to immediately do is look at profit. And the profit first system, which I know you know, is as revenue comes in, cash deposits, immediately take a predetermined percentage of that money, allocate it toward profit, hide it from yourself, run the business off the remainder. That's the fundamental basis of profit first. And what happens is now it forces your business to reverse engineer profitability. If you want to have a 10% profit, that's what you're committed to. Take 10%. Now run your business off the remainder, and it'll show you where the weak spots are in your business, and you have to adjust accordingly.
Awesome. I love it. Okay. So you mentioned earlier, at the beginning of our conversation, you said that there were 6 stages. Is that correct? Did I understand that correctly, of Clockwork?
7 stages.
7. Okay. That's what I thought. I thought I heard 6, but I wrote down 7, and I've got them written down. So that's where I was going next. So can you elaborate on the 7th stage? And we'll just talk very, very briefly at a very top level.
Yeah. And if I can do a little cheat, I'm going to actually go to my copy of the book just so I use the right titles.
Of course.
Because I don't have... Even though I've written the book, I don't have it memorized.
That's okay. I mean, same things happened for me with my engineering book that I wrote 6 years ago. It's like, oh, you said this in page 25.
I know. I'm like, I don't remember that. The funny thing is with Profit First too, there's like 5 different steps. Like, Mike, walk us through the 5 steps. I'm like, I can't remember it. So so there's a page in the book you can say dedicated to. That's the outline of it. I'll give you more detail in the book. So the first step is the 4D mix. Now, the 4D mix is the understanding that businesses have different stages of activity. The 4Ds are this: doing, deciding, delegating, and designing. Mm-hmm. And as a solopreneur or with employees, there's a mix of this happening within your business. Inevitably, the business owner is slanted too much toward doing, and that's why they're strapped for time. What doing is the actual doing of work. And every business must be doing stuff because that's how we serve our clientele. You must be making that product, delivering that service, and so forth. That's the doing work. But the next level up, and as you start to grow your business as an entrepreneur, you're going to go into what's called the deciding phase. The deciding phase is where you start using other resources, virtual assistants, part-time help, maybe a full-time employee to do the work. What we do then is we start deciding about the work that's getting done. Basically, you hire that first employee or virtual assistant, and they say, hey, I got some questions about the work you want me to do. What should I do in this circumstance? And we give them direction. We decide for them. We say, oh, do this, do that. 10 minutes later, they walk back in your office or give you a call and say, should I do this? Or I thought maybe I should do that. And we decide for them. We continue to give them a stream of decisions, and it becomes very distracting. In fact, most businesses can't get past 2 or maybe 3 full-time employees because at that level, all the business owner is doing is making decision after decision on behalf of their employees. They're basically a single head or brain, the owner, with 8 or 9 or 10 arms flapping around. That's the people doing the work. It's what I call task rabbiting.
Right.
I tell you, hey, Joel, do this, but I will be the brains behind the organization. It's an instant trap in growth. So we need to move on to the next stage, which is called delegating. Sadly, most entrepreneurs say they're delegating work when they're actually deciding about work. Delegating is the assignment of outcomes. I don't tell you, hey, here's what I expect you to do this task 1, 2, 3. I say, here's the outcome we're trying to achieve for our customer. Do we agree to this? What's the path that we agree is probably the best path? Now, I want you to get us to that outcome. I also acknowledge that things are going to happen along the way. I am not here to give you answers for that. That is your responsibility because that's why I hired you. Get us to this outcome. And once we get to the outcome, let's convene again and talk about it. Maybe I can coach you and we can coach each other on getting to that outcome faster or better next time, but just get to the outcome. That's true delegation. The highest level is designing. Designing happens, especially for small entrepreneurs, really at 2 times. One is before they start the business. This is the big thinking, like how we're going to change the world. That's design. Sadly, the day you open the doors, it's putting out fires every day forward, and we never go back to designing, except when we take a shower. That seems like the one other time when your mind is disconnected and you don't have a phone in your hand and you're totally disconnected, that all of a sudden those great thoughts appear. That's design time. Design is thinking, vision, where we want to direct this business, and then strategic work where we're putting the right people and resources in the right places. We need to get back to design time. It has to be specifically implemented. So that's stage 1.
So stage 1 sounds like it is a rather in-depth and kind of complex in its own right. Like there's 4 micro stages within stage 1. I mean, how long does that, it's a loaded question, but like say somebody's doing $1 million a year or $2 million a year, and they're clearly stuck. They're running around and they've got that task rabbit syndrome. Like how long would it normally take for somebody, like if they committed, it's like, okay, Mike, I'm going to work with you, or I'm going to follow your process, whatever it is. Like how long does it really take to kind of get to that top level, which is designing, right? That vision.
To actually get there. And that's what we're targeting. For most businesses, I find it's about 1 year to 2 years of really committing to this process. The stage 1 is simply an assessment. So stage 1, what I laid out is what you need to know.
Right.
What you actually do in stage 1 is simply say, how much time am I devoting to designing? Now, ultimately, an entrepreneur will not devote all their time to designing, but it becomes the majority of time. If we think of, and I'm just picking large companies because everyone knows the name like Amazon.
Right.
Jeff Bezos is not like, when you place an order on Amazon, we all know he's not running to the warehouse and packing this for us. And what he's doing is he's thinking strategically, where can Amazon have the next impact? How can it generate even more revenue? Does Jeff Bezos still do some of the doing? Yeah. When the new Alexa product's coming out, is he one of the testers? I'm sure it's at his house. He's playing around with it. When there's a strategic negotiation with another major vendor on distribution, like with UPS, is he at the table? Yeah. I suspect he's doing the major wheeling and dealing. But the majority of his time is on strategic work. That's what design is.
Awesome.
And that's where we want to move ourselves. It's a slow throttle over time.
Right.
All right. Next level.
Let's move on to the QBR. What is the
QBR? I consider this really the heart of Clockwork. This is the big thing. QBR stands for the Queen Bee role. I was studying what drives business efficiency, and I found the answer actually not within the businesses I was studying. They all had their own solution, but no common thread. What I found is beehives, interestingly, have the common thread. QBR stands for the Queen Bee role. The Queen Bee role is the most critical role for the survivability of a hive. They got to lay eggs. Happens that the queen bee supports it. Every bee knows there's simply 2 rules. Make sure the queen bee is laying eggs, protect her. And if she's doing that, then you go out and do your primary job function. Here's the thing with the QBR. Every single business has a primary function that the business's success hinges on. You have to know what that function is, and every employee needs to be educated on it. That function must be humming along at all times. If it does, your entire business will elevate. If you don't know what it is, or you're ignoring it, or it gets compromised, it will crush the survivability of your own organization. So the question is, what is my QBR? Here's the ultimate shortcut. Define what your brand promise is. What are you known for? FedEx. FedEx is known to get your packages there within the delivery expectations, overnight if you so desire, or 3 days, but they will deliver on time every time. That is their brand promise. The QBR is the function or the activity that supports it. What supports that? Logistics, moving those packages. Now, here's the thing. FedEx could say, you know what? We're going to amplify our customer service. We're going to have the most friendly people you've ever talked to when you call FedEx. Will that elevate the company? No. Will they get some notoriety for it? Maybe, but it's passive. But if one package gets delayed, that person's going to be on Twitter saying, FedEx sucks. If FedEx ignores their core competency, the QBR, logistics, to do something else, the business will actually suffer. But every employee at FedEx knows this. If we aren't delivering packages on time, we have an issue. Go make sure that's happening. And no, the person from accounting, that their job's accounting, doesn't run to the warehouse and start moving packages. but they know their job is to protect the people that are serving that role. Customer service knows, protect those teams, make sure they're doing it, give customer service. If our team needs more time because one of our warehouses burned down, communicate it so customers know what's going on so we can get that warehouse back up to speed. Every business has a QBR. We have to declare what's our brand differentiator, what do we want to be known for, define the activity behind it, QBR, and then make sure that's protected and moving along, humming along.
That's fantastic. So the huge light bulb moment came off for me because I think you brought up a great example. It's like, I think some people think that like you have to be great at everything. Like you have to have superior customer service. It's like, well, you kind of debunked that, or you kind of said, not that customer service isn't important, but it reshifts the focus saying, okay, where does customer service fit in with our brand promise, right? And if we are aligned with that brand promise, like which is delivering your packages on time every single time, then kind of everything else, like customer service is kind of below that. Meaning customer service should take care of itself if we're protecting that brand promise. Now, there are other companies who pride themselves on customer service, where if they put that towards the top, meaning like we're the friendliest and we care about our customers, then if that's what they're protecting, then that then supports everything else, which is, delivery or you name it. That makes total sense. And I've never heard it explained like that before.
So for micro business, just talking about myself. So being an author is a business. My product goes on a shelf, but not at a supermarket. It goes on Barnes & Noble's shelf. I went through this process for myself years ago as I was developing and assessing this concept. And what came clear to me is that my brand promise is simplifying complex business ideas. Mm-hmm. Then I said, well, there's many ways I can do this. I can do it through books or speaking or interviews. So those are all things I'm doing. But what's the one activity that's most important? And it's books. Like if I'm doing so many interviews that it's impeding my writing, actually, I'm going to start slipping back further and further. So I can never compromise the delivery of books. What I'm saying though is the other things can happen. They have a degree of importance, but they're not the most important. Just like FedEx has to have customer service. They can't just say, you know what, let's ditch the customer service. That's important. They need it, but it's not the most important. So the key of the QBR is identifying the literally most important function happening within your organization and make sure that goes unimpeded all the time.
So it's almost like your company's functional organization chart, right? Like if you have the...
Yeah.
Kind
exactly.
of. That's a bad analogy, but like...
No, it's not. No, it's exactly what it is. So many businesses, it's a shame. I'll give you an example. In the olden days, I used to install computer networks. I had a business, I had the great fortune of selling that company. When we install business computer systems, we'd always go to the president's office, the owner's office, and that person would get the nicest equipment. But one example was, say it was a hedge fund, trading. The managing partner had the nicest computer in the world. It was so cutting edge. But the people that were driving forward the QBR transactions had like old junk computers. The president was like, why are we so slow? Why aren't we trading faster? It's because you're ill-equipped. You're equipping the wrong person. You're serving the ego. You're not serving the QBR. So even for myself, like when it comes to writing books, that's the most important thing. Any other stuff I have is fluff. So I need to invest the most effort in making sure the books are produced. If I have to choose where a dollar goes, it goes toward improving my books, not toward a nicer camera for a video interview. So the key is to get out of ego. The old organizational charts shows the president up top, and that's where the ego goes and all the money flows. A functional chart of how business kind of flows along, and you identify the QBR, that's where your money and effort needs to go.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic, man. So then we go into the next stage, which flows nicely into what the QBR is. So what's stage 3?
Yeah, so it's protect and serve. And what this is we need our employees, our entire team, realizing the importance of the QBR and that needs to be protected. And this can bruise some ego. So we have 10 people here in my office. I have a business partner, what I'm doing. And I tell him, like, Ron, I got to write books. He's like, man, we need you doing other things. Get out there and do some more speaking, man, or help lead the company in this certain vision. And he's come to realize, and all my team has come to realize, is if I'm not writing books that have a prolific impact on our readership, this business will suffer as a result. Actually, all the activities will suffer as a result. So they know now, and they have to believe it, and they do, that if Mike's not writing books, we have an issue. Here's a better example, a doctor's office. Next time you go to the doctor's office, if you ever see the doctor like when you walk in the waiting room, coming out saying, "Hey, Joel, good to see you. Just sit down. I have to pull some files, do some insurance claims. I'll walk in and do the exam in a little bit." That doctor's office has a problem. The doctor doesn't greet you. They have a receptionist. The doctor doesn't pull your file. The doctor doesn't even do the pre-exam. The QBR for many doctors' offices is a thorough and efficient exam. That's what the patient benefits from. So all the doctor does is they come in, they do the exam, they call you to their office, give you the prescription of what to do, and then they go to the next person. That's the QBR. And every employee knows if you see the doctor kind of milling around escorting patients in, or the doctor is doing an insurance claim, we as an organization have an issue and it's suffering in its entirety. We must protect them and serve them. That's the queen bee doing that role. Last little point is in my own business, your business, ultimately, you don't want to be the queen bee because that means you are the linchpin for the organization. You want to get that two off your shoulders. And once that's off your shoulders and other people are serving the queen bee role, that's when the business can really run itself.
Is the queen bee role just one person or can it be multiple?
Great question. It can be multiple. In small businesses, it often is served by one person. As the organization grows, served by a magnitude of people and resources. Think about FedEx. It's logistics is the queen bee role. They have tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands serving that, from the delivery guys to the logistics that's happened behind the scene. So all of them are serving that. That heart of the organization needs to be protected.
Excellent. Okay, so let's move on very quickly to the next one. So just a quick recap, the 7 stages of Clockwork we're talking about here. Stage 1 is the 4Ds. Stage 2 is the QBR, the queen bee role. Stage 3 is protect and serve, the QBR. Now stage 4.
Capturing systems. Yeah. So now this is where scalability kicks in. Once we have these fundamentals in place, now business is ready to grow. What we're going to want to do is to take work off of usually our highest paid, highest skilled people, take off the lowest level work and push it kind of down the organization. And when I say down the organization, I don't mean this as a negative thing or ranking people better than other. It's just the function. We need to protect the core functions. How do you do this? Through capturing systems. Now, here's the interesting thing. Most organizations, even to date, use SOPs, standard operating procedures. And I found SOPs fall short in so many ways. But in particular, they've become these big, thick manuals, these books about how the organization runs that no one reads. They sit on shelves. We need a more dynamic system. The other shortcoming or challenge I see small businesses have is they say, you know what, I don't have any systems, or I just have a few. I don't have time to develop my systems. Here's what I found is a great reality. Every small business, everyone watching right now has all the systems they need. They're already created. They're all in place. The only challenge we have to face is they're stuck in your head, right? You as a business owner, you're doing them all. They're just here. We need to extract them. The most efficient way to extract them is through a capture process. As you do that activity, package something, email someone, process something on the computer, do a phone call, simply record it. And you can do most of this with your iPhone or some capture software on a computer. But now you record the process as you do it. You now give it to the next person that now you're going to delegate this work to. Tell them, we want you to achieve XYZ outcome. Here's the best practice I've been using so far. Please follow this and improve upon it. And once you're done following this process and you have it down, create the next video for the next person. Because ultimately, the best student is the teacher. So make your employee that's now taking ownership of a system to actually record the video to teach it. Because once they're teaching it, they will have mastered it themselves.
I love it, man. And I'll tell you, I expected to come into this interview talking pretty much all about systems. But up until this point, we didn't even get to systems until step. Right. We talked more about like branding and creating a very solid vision for people to follow. And systems aren't even near the top of that list. They're towards the top, but like you have to establish that before you can even start to build those systems.
Yeah, the key to a business that runs like Clockwork is prioritization. It's selectivity. It's doing the fewest things with the greatest impact. And most small businesses are trying to do everything. That's actually the bane to our growth, and we don't even realize it. We keep expanding. So the Clockwork system is first about narrowing things down to the few things, the QBR, then capturing the systems that do it. And as we go through this process, at the very end, you'll see how topsy-turvy it gets. One of the last considerations is something that most people make the first consideration. That's a mistake.
Awesome. So I actually want to pause there because I don't want to reveal the entire book. I want people to go out and grab the book because this is essentially everything that's in the book. So we went through the 4 of the 7 stages of Clockwork. And I also don't want to like completely overwhelm our listeners. It's a fantastic book. And so what I want to do now is for the next, let's say 10 minutes, like I want to go into a rewind section,
Sure.
right? And I want to talk about what got you to here. Like Experts Unleashed is all about identifying the opportunities that experts that I'm interviewing and myself have been able to find, right? So here you are today, Mike. You've written multiple books and you're an established thought leader. But can you take us back to kind of when you started in business? Like, can you identify one or two pivot points where opportunity really presented itself to get you to kind of where you are today?
Yeah. There's no question about it. So I've been an entrepreneur my entire life. Right out of college, I became a business owner and have had the good fortune of selling businesses, 2 of them. I've had the misfortune, which now I realize is actually the greatest fortune of all, of wiping myself out. I sold my one company to private equity. I sold the second one to a Fortune 500, became a self-made millionaire in my early 30s and became a cocky bonus. Did not appreciate that. I was totally arrogant, a dick, and I lost all my money as a result. And I deserved it. I wasted money. I became an angel investor, a horrible investor, though, an angel of death, quite frankly. I was blowing money. And one day, I woke up to the fact that I had to consider declaring bankruptcy. I actually never did. I believe that I dug myself such a deep hole, and that wasn't the responsibility of creditors. That's my responsibility. But I also had to face my family and tell them I'd lost everything. And my family stuck with me, unbelievably, but we lost our house, we lost our possession, we lost everything. And it became a wake-up call. But this became the pivot. What was so fascinating was I've always had that, I've heard that saying, if you had all the money in the world, what would you do? And I remember contemplating that over time, saying, I would just be an author. If I didn't have any financial worries, I'd be an author. But I think there's a better question. The problem with that question is it presupposes that you have to have money to make that dream a reality. When I had no money, I said, now I have nothing. What am I going to do? What do I want to do? And the answer was the same. I said, I want to be an author. I mean, I don't know how much authors make, but I'm starting at scratch. What do I want to do? When the answer is the same for all the money in the world and no money in the world, holy cannoli, that is a calling. At least that's how I define a calling. And I said, I'm going to be an author. So 10 years ago, on the verge of bankruptcy, I said, I'm going to become an author. And I wrote my first book, The Toilet Paper Entrepreneur, this edgy, kind of angry book, actually trying to resolve my own mistakes in business. And subsequently, every book I've written, from The Pumpkin Plan to Profit First, now to Clockwork, every book I've written, I'm actually trying to correct all my misunderstandings about entrepreneurship. So I'm actually writing books to serve and help and fix myself. And then finding there's a community of other people that have similar struggles and can benefit from the books.
People overcomplicate, like coming up with new ideas. And like, if you just look inside yourself, and we talk about that, we call this the expert's curse. It's like, I don't know how to explain like what I do, or I've got a million ideas. Like, what do I run with? And it's like, I talk about how to position yourself as an expert, even if nobody's heard of you. It's like, you are very likely your own, like use yourself as a case study and look inside. What problems have you solved first? Because almost guaranteed there are other people. Like there's 7 billion people in this world. I guarantee you somebody else has had the same problem that you've got. You've solved it. And people want to know how you solve it.
Yeah. And I think one challenge experts have is we think everyone else has access to the knowledge we have. And that's not true. We're like, oh, well, everyone knows this already. They don't. And the other thing is like, but it's already been answered. So people say, but Mike, Profit First, it's the pay yourself first system. It's the envelope system. This is nothing new. And they're right. It's nothing new conceptually. It's a new packaging. So I took it and said, okay, here's established concepts that work in this space. I'm going to shift it over here and see if it works. And sure enough, it does. And I'm going to introduce it to a new community in a new package. So it's a shame that so many experts or people that have ideas inside them say, well, the idea's already been played out. It has not. Give it a new flavor, a new package, and the impact you can have, it can be extraordinary.
Not only that, but timing is everything. The pay yourself first model. Yeah. Okay, great. That was created X number of years ago. But you know what? New people are always entering the market. And if you assume that everybody has read that and everybody has heard that, like that is a fatal mistake. Like that's a fatal flaw. And timing is everything. So if you come out with that message and you put your own unique spin on it, like there's going to be people who have never heard of the pay yourself first. And so people have to understand that timing is everything, and market is constantly evolving and growing and siphoning through new and old people. And so I want to highlight what you said, which was the thought process that you had when you decided to become an author, right? You said, if I had all the money in the world, what would you do? And then you ask yourself a similar question, which is, if you had nothing, what would you do? When did you piece that together? Did that kind of all happen? Did it all come to Genesis when you were on the verge of declaring bankruptcy? Meaning like, this is the same question that I would have asked myself? Or
yeah, for me, I had to be in that situation because otherwise it was theory. If I had all the money in the world is simply a theoretical question. I don't have all the money in the world. And the question of I don't have any money in the world was theory because at the time I had money, but it was depleting. Once I hit rock bottom, then it was a true reality. I had no money. I said, what am I going to do? Now, here was also interesting. The vocation of being an author had to make money. I didn't say, oh, this is just a pipe dream and it'll be fun one day if. I said, I want this, but I also want it with certain parameters. It's got to support the lifestyle that I intend for myself. So I looked at it from a different perspective. I met with other people and I said, you being an author, are you freaking crazy? Authors make no money. Like that's the worst space to be in. And I said, well, let me ask you, that person I would be telling me this. I said, first of all, have you ever been an author? And most of them say, no, I have no experience. So, okay, so your knowledge is irrelevant or your thoughts are irrelevant. When people were authors, I said, well, it didn't work for you, obviously, right? And they're like, no. I said, well, tell me why. Well, it wasn't their full-time devotion. They were writing books to be more of a business card, quite frankly. But then I also met with Tim Ferriss and other very successful authors. I said, hey, Tim, can you make money being an author? And he's like, you can become a millionaire by becoming an author. And I never met J.K. Rowling. I hope to one day, but I suspect she would have the same answer. Stephen King, I'm sure. So I knew there was a path to make money, and I only started to seek out the advice and direction from people who made money as authors. Mm-hmm. That's when I started putting pieces of the puzzle together and said, oh my gosh, I can make an extraordinary living in this if I do X, Y, and Z. And that's what I've done. I'm 10 years into it. And just like any other business, it's a struggle to get going, but an authorship has a flywheel effect to it. As you get more and more momentum, it's easier to get even more momentum. And that's the stage I'm at now.
It's fantastic, man. When you were in that situation, right? When you were kind of contemplating and you're coming up with these theories and figuring out really what the path that you wanted, the way that I'm kind of hearing you explain it, figuring out like how this is going to support the lifestyle that you wanted for your business and for your life and for your family, right? At that point, did you know of like the big takeaway that I've gotten from this is this queen bee syndrome or the queen bee
role,
queen bee role. At that point, did you know about the queen bee role? Like, was it identified as that, or did you call it something else, or was that developed kind of like later on?
That came later on. I didn't realize this. So I was like, I had to take on everything. But I also realized very quickly is all of a sudden I hit this limit. I couldn't work anymore. There was another kind of pivotal moment. I actually write about it in the book. I call it the death by chocolate moment. The reason it happened was I had an office. It's really hard for me to work from home. So I like to get an office. I was able to negotiate a free space in a factory, a cookie factory, because my friend owned it. They have now, I think now it's about 25 ovens blazing 24 hours a day. And these are commercial ovens, booking, each one bakes 1,000 cookies at a time or something. My office that they graciously gave to me, and it was a gracious gift, was almost directly above the ovens in a windowless office on the second floor of this building. In one particular day, I remember it was 93 degrees outside in the New York City area where I live, and it was 98 degrees in my office. There was no air conditioning. And I was just like, I said, you know what? How bad do I want this? I'm going to grind it out. It was all this grinding out. And there's this nauseating smell, by the way, of chocolate. That's why I call it death by chocolate. Yep. Like the first time you smell fresh baked cookies, it's amazing. When you smell fresh baked cookies every day for 24 hours a day for a couple of years, it is nauseating. But I was like, how bad do I want this? I got to grind it out. And I looked then back at my life and I said, this was 2 or 3 years into being an author of doing this. I'm like, I'm grinding out so hard and I'm not getting much momentum. That kind of started this trigger, said, there's got to be a better way. Maybe it's not about grind and hustle, the popular terms. Maybe it's about efficiency. Maybe I can put other resources in, even as a solo author right now, of people to support me and support the mission and start moving this forward. Maybe I can move on to just doing what I'm best at, which is writing books and public speaking is my other talent. Everything else I kind of suck at. And so today, our company here, we have 10 employees. Talk to most authors and they'll say, it's just me. I moved to the QBR and now I have a staff of 10 other colleagues that work alongside me to move this authorship forward. And I think that was a big turning moment.
Well, you asked yourself, how bad do I want it? You identified the most important tasks and responsibilities that you need to do. And ultimately that's, I think from what I heard, that's how this whole QBR came.
That's exactly it. Yeah. it came out of exhaustion and just working relentlessly and saying, this is not going to work. And then I said, oh, there's a better way. It seems often for myself, I suspect a lot of people listening in right now, is that it's a point of exhaustion or just frustration that we're willing to turn. I'm hoping from our conversation that some people say, oh, I can see I'm trending this way. I'm going to make this leap over a little bit sooner before I get exhausted from it.
Mike, this has been a fantastic conversation. I want to do a quick recap before we wrap up here. I mean, we started off talking about, obviously, Clockwork, fantastic book. We talked about the 4 of the 7 stages to run like clockwork. And we talked about the 4 Ds, the QBR, protecting and serving the QBR, and then capturing systems. Then we also learned that you are a big vintage video game fan.
Recently I've become that. Yes, I'm totally into it.
We talked about Maslow's hierarchy of needs and how that parallels to entrepreneurship. And we talked about that sales equals stress. I mean, this has been just a complete crash course on, not even a crash course. I would say it's an advanced course on really how you need to think about your business and redefining the most important things of your business so you don't burn out, go bankrupt, or consider filing bankruptcy. And then we talked about essentially the rewind of how you got to where you are today. First of all, is there anything that we left out that you wanted to make sure that we talked about, or that maybe I inadvertently skipped over that you thought was important?
Well, there's tons more, but you said the key words. I don't want to overwhelm people.
Right.
We could go for hours. Just the last little thought is with Clockwork, Profit First, actually anything I do, you do, and then I suggest that for myself, always take small steps. So with Clockwork, if you want your business to run itself, it's not going to happen overnight. This is not a switch and all of a sudden you're jamming your business into second gear, even though people use that term. This is a very slow, methodical process, but consistent, deliberate, small steps will make massive change for your business.
Fantastic. So where can people connect with you? Where can people go grab your book? Let's spread the word. Let's give people ways to find you.
Okay. So if you want to go kind of the one kind of hub where everything is, it's my website. It's MikeMichalowicz.com. Here's the beautiful thing. Well, first of all, that last name is a travesty. It's the most difficult name to spell in the world is Michalowicz.
We'll include it in the show notes for sure.
Thank you. But for listeners that don't have the show notes, I'll give you 2 shortcuts. You can go to Google and type in Mike. That's my first name. And then Mick, M-I-C. When you type in Mick, you'll see this big Polish name drop down. Click on that. Or you can go to MikeMotorbike.com. The funny thing is my nickname in high school was Mike Motorbike. The irony is I've never driven a motorcycle. But if you go to MikeMotorbike.com, that forwards you to my website. And I have all my books there, free chapter download, so you can experience it before you decide to purchase it or not. I used to write for the Wall Street Journal for years, so you can get those free articles. I also have a podcast. I'm a blogger. It's all up there for free. And then the last thing, people are specifically interested in Clockwork itself. I've launched a supplemental site with all the resources for the book and additive stuff. My newest research I keep on posting up there that I'm finding after the book became published, and that's at clockwork.life. So if you want to live the Clockwork life, go to clockwork.life, L-I-F-E, and you'll find it there.
And your podcast, which is fantastic, by the way, is called the Profit First Podcast. So I'll plug it for you.
Oh, thanks.
And yes, so an easiest way, if you can't figure out how to spell his name, is search for Clockwork or Profit First, or was it the toilet paper?
Toilet paper entrepreneur, pumpkin plan. Yeah, any of the book titles, you'll find it. Yeah.
Mike, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. Please go hook up with Mike. Go grab his books. It's fantastic stuff for any entrepreneur, any business owner. Mike, it's been a pleasure. I'm sure we'll be connecting soon. Take care. Thanks for joining us.
Joel, thank you so much. You rock.
Thanks so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and we look forward to giving you the next one. Now, if you want additional trainings and content outside of the podcast, I release exclusive video trainings on my Experts Unleashed YouTube channel. And if you'd like to come hang out with thousands of other fellow experts, join our Facebook group community where we do hangouts and webinars to help support you in your journey. Finally, if you'd like my personal help to develop, launch, or scale your business, contact me directly for private consulting opportunities to see if any spots are available. And you can find all of the information above at expertsunleashed.com.